Hello and welcome. This is a mini series where you'll be joining me on a small journey where we will teach you the basics of Blender. This guide will go through everything you will need when modelling anything you like, alongside some tips and tricks that I found useful when modelling myself. So for the journey ahead, I'll be showing you step by step each and everything you will need by getting you to model a cake. So by the end of this entire series, we would have modelled a cake such as this one. By the end of the tutorial, you'll understand about 80% of the controls needed for Blender, and it's only ever really the 80% that you'll ever need. There's so many different tools to Blender, and majority of the time you just don't need any of them. In the future, you might not need some of the tools that I'll show you today, but I'm going to show you them anyway because it'll be too useful for you to understand. And these controls will be across all the categories, such as transforming objects, shading, materials, lighting, rendering, animating, you name it, it will be done. But, to begin with, I'll take you to the very basics, and I mean the very basics of what you need to learn. How to install Blender. Right then. So the reason why I'm teaching you to download and how to download Blender is because although most of you might find it pretty simple, some might find it quite difficult to find the right website. But more importantly, to have the right software in order to download Blender, because it might only accept certain versions of software or certain types of software depending on what operating systems you're using and the version of the operating system which you're using. Because as following, when teaching this tutorial, I'll be using version 4.2. But anyways, you head over to the Blender website, just go onto whichever browser that you use and search it up, go onto their website, it'll take you to this page you can see in front of you. This is Blender 4.2. It's a download button right beneath it, and you click onto that download button. Now you get the freedom to create because it is a free software. So, which means, you can publish any of the work that you do for free. But it also means, so for instance, you can choose which software you'd like to choose. There's a source code, which means you can edit the Blender itself. Because obviously it's open source software because it's free. You can use Linux, Mac OS, Windows. You can even download it through Steam, and then you click download. It should download automatically, take you to a donate page. Reason being, obviously, it's free software, so any of their budget comes from the people who are kindly enough to donate. So if you find yourself using Blender a lot, it'd be nice to show some appreciation. You can do it monthly, or you can do one-time donations, but I'm sure they will appreciate it massively. After all, they are the reason we are able to model for free. Right then, moving on to the good stuff. Now that Blender is downloaded, you set up the wizard, it's now officially installed, so click onto it and you'll be greeted by this screen. This is essentially Blender itself. It's all done, it's all ready to go. See this little menu in front of you. Don't really care about it, so you can sod off just by clicking off. Now, first things first, I've been using different modelling softwares now because I found these controls quite awkward for me personally, but I've seen since to get used to it. Quite a simple one. Let's say how to orbit the camera. Nice and simple, quite universal. Clicking the middle mouse button, you can orbit the camera there. And this is assuming that you're on the computer with the mouse. If not, then I strongly recommend that you do it because at the end of the day, it just makes life so much easier when operating stuff like extrusions or adjusting vertices, which we'll get onto later. It's just so much easier to have a mouse with the shortcuts as well. It makes life 10 times easier. So middle mouse button moves the camera, orbits around the point, as you can see. And if you'd like to pan, so instead of going around in circles and circles and circles, you can hold shift down at the same time, then hold the middle mouse button, and you can see it's now panning. So I'm now no longer circling the square, or the cube, sorry. Oh, hate me. And then we can hold the middle mouse button and the orbit there. And go back. And you see that I'm a bit further away now, so if I just scroll up in the middle mouse button, I'll scroll towards, or zoom in rather. Scroll down with the mouse button and zoom out. And that is the basics of navigating in 3D space. As you can see, there's on the left hand side, we've got a menu here now. So now that the cube is selected in object mode, I have this, which is select, drag. This can change, but this as well, we'll move on to that later. But more importantly, when we move on to move, rotate, scale, and transform, I guess. That's almost the combination of all three. Right, so we don't want to keep pressing buttons and moving the axes, but just to show you this, we're in 3D space, and if you're in 3D space, there's only 3 axes. You've got the x-axis, which is this red one. You've got the y-axis, which is this green one, and you've got the z-axis, which is this blue one. So, in order to move objects with the move mode selected on the left-hand side, you can just simply grab the axis and drag it along the axis. Just Control Z to go back to where it was. Same with the y-axis. Control Z. Same with the z-axis. But you know, when you move on to more sophisticated modelling, like later on in the videos, you don't really want to be having to click all these buttons on the side all the time. So to speed up the process, I'll click off now and go back to cursor. And I'll click on the object, I can simply press the hotkey, which is G. Now G moves it into free move. The only problem with free move being that it moves it across all 3 different axes, and it's very difficult to navigate it when you're trying to keep one of the axes restricted. Say if you only wanted to move it on the X and the Y, you'll still move it on the Z because it's in 3D space and it's hard to determine which axis you want to use just from the free move. So if you press escape, it will cancel that. So to be more accurate, if you press G and then you press X and you move your mouse, you'll move on the X axis. If I now press Y, it's now moving on the Y axis. And you press Z, now moving on the Z axis. So I find that my personal favourite. However, you may like to use the button and then move the axis just like this. You see, if you press the blue one, it'll cancel out the blue axis and move just on the X and Y. And if you press this one, it'll move just on the X and Z. I just lied to you, the X and Y, sorry. And if you move around the camera and you hold the green one, move just on the X and Z. So these little squares are basically cancelling out the axis that the colour is referring to. So if you press this, the red square, it will not move on the red axis. So if you go back to where it was, go back to this, and press J, and you want to do the same thing, you hold Shift and press Z. It's basically saying, I don't want the Z axis to move, but I want the other 2 axes to move, the X and Y axis. And you can do the same for Shift and X, Shift and Y. It'd be crazy, don't know. And that is pretty much it, just for the movement alone. If you found that a bit confusing, you know, give yourself a couple of minutes to get used to it. But once you've got used to that, you will find scale and rotation much easier. So if I show you that now, moving on to scale first, press the S, okay, that's for scale. You can just move it across all 3 axes like that. But let's just say I don't want a cube anymore. I want it to be long like a cuboid. We'll press X axis and it will grow just on the X axis. I'll press the Y axis, just in that direction, Z axis, do it in that direction. Make it really flat. So if you're doing, I don't know, square plates or box, like a pizza box, making nice and flat, making skyscrapers or tall towers, you can stretch it all the way up. Maybe you want to do a bus, you press SX. It's the same again if you wanted to move it on two axes but not the third. Press S and Shift Z, move it just on the X and Y. Shift X, Shift Y. So that's scale done, and then I can show you again for rotation. It's moving across just all the different random axis points. So we don't want that because it's being accurate. So we press R, and we press X, just on the X axis, just on the Y axis, and just on the Z axis. So again, Shift Z moves it on two axes. Shift X moves it on two axes. All that does is just cancels it out. Then moving on, let's say we don't want this cube anymore. We want to delete something. It's just a cube in the scene and the camera, but obviously we need the camera. We like the camera. The camera's what we use to render. So let's get rid of the cube. What you simply do is press delete, and it's gone. Just like that. Didn't need it anymore. But now you're thinking, what can we use to model? You can use the drop down menu here, add, you've got all of these things here. You can just add another cube back in, simple as that. Don't want a cube, and we don't want to keep pressing tabs up at the top. So, personal favourite, got all of the hotkeys, Shift A, look at the mesh. We're just going to add, we'll add the monkey. If you didn't know already, this monkey is Blender's mascot. A lot of 3D softwares use a mascot. It's just a little something that you can already generate into it. And for Blender, it's this monkey. So you can scale it. I think I can make it a little bit smaller. Ooh, almost deleted it. A little bit smaller. And then moving on, let's add another object. Go on. And this can be, we rotate it upside down, just on the x-axis. You see now, there's a slight tilt. It's not quite accurate. You can hold shift to move it slower. But even then, I find that slightly inaccurate. So if you hold control, it will snap to a perfect 180 degrees. Moving with G. We want to move down the Z axis a little bit. And then across, press G again, and go across the Y axis. And then scale that down. And you have a little pointed chin. Alright. Just for a little brief showing, I'll show you how to make a material. Now let's give this a bit of colour, if it will let me. There we go. Oh dear. That's a bad sign already. So we'll name it monkey. Why not? And we'll give it nice orange colour. Orange for Blender. And you're wondering, why can't I see my colour? Why can't I see it? It's because we are in the incorrect mode. We're in the viewport shading, which won't show anything rendered, won't show any material shown. So we can go into the material, show you just the material without any lighting effects, without any the rendering kicking in. And if you press this one, we'll see the render's kicked in. And we will now be wondering why there's a shadow cast above his face. It's because of this object right here. This is a light. It's a point light. You can have different versions. You can have sun, spot, area. Stick with point for now. You can move that a bit closer to him. Move it down. Move it again on the y-axis. A nice bright shine brightly on his face. Then we can see him in all his glory. Let's do it again with the cone. Let's add a new material for the cone. I'll call it beard. Why not? Give him a nice dark coloured beard. That's just teaching the basics of the materials. You can change that in the future. Just different of everything, shaders, images, and then if we press F12, it will render an image. And you're thinking, hold on, that's not what we was looking at. And as you could have guessed, it's because of the camera. The camera is currently showing this angle here. If you want to move the camera, you can use the simple controls as before. You use G. If you're wondering how I got into the camera, you press the hotkey 0. Pressing 0 takes you in and out of the camera focus, or where the camera's facing, should I say. So we could do that. And we could rotate on these. But my favourite is press just press the wrong thing. Oh, there we go. Yeah, view, navigation, fly navigation. Let's try that again. Pressing the wrong buttons. Fly navigation. Use the mouse to move the camera like this, and then you can use WASD. For some reason it's moving ridiculously slow. And you can move it like that. I'll put a little bit there. There we go. We'll leave it as that. Come out of there using the orbit for pressing 0. We'll deselect that. And that will be that. Right, so now if you render image again, you can either press F12 or you can go up here and press render image. Now that the camera's moved, much better picture. A bit more focus on his face, obviously still on a slight angle, but that's much better personally. I think we will leave it there. That is everything to show you for the basics. Well, then leaving it there, that is everything to show you for the bare basics of Blender. I know there's not much cake being made at the moment, but this was just to show you the bare bones basics of the interface of Blender and to get used to the controls. Next video we'll be starting the modelling of the cake, so make sure you get your practice in and make sure you understand all the controls, because we'll be kicking it up a notch now, ramping up the learning speed. If you stick to it, by the end of this series your cake will look somewhat like this. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in part 2.